Our final session this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Do boards lead? The board of directors is structurally at the apex of decision-making in companies. The expectation is that they will provide the elements of superintendence, direction, and control. Does this actually happen in boardrooms, or have boards become increasingly captive to management's ideas and proposals? Ladies and gentlemen, the session is a conversation between Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan and Mr. Damodaran. Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan is the independent chairperson of Castrol India. He has been a professional manager since 1967. He has served as chairman of Unilever Arabia, managing director of Brook Bond Lipton, and vice chairman of Hindustan Lever. Besides holding senior positions in several TATA companies, he presently mentors startups and corporate managers through his talks and writing. Among the various courses that he has taught, one merits mention: LWNT, Learning What Nobody Teaches. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan.
Thank you. Thank you.
In conversation with Mr. Damodaran. Gentlemen.
Are more people coming in from the outside? We shouldn't deny anyone the benefit of Gopal's wisdom on this subject. He's just brought out a book, as some of you might be aware, addressing nearly the same question, or maybe answering the question that we have posed: do boards lead? And if they are actually to lead, what is that input that the law does not provide for that they need to bring? So let me set the context for you. There are institutions in India that provide training for directors, including one that has been set up by the government of India. And they conduct a lot of training programs for directors. They get you to pass an exam. Then after that, they keep you on some kind of a list, and then expect companies to go to that list and find directors. Very few companies look at that list, because the companies know that that's not what they're looking for. And why do I say this? Because what these persons are taught are which form to fill in what contingency, which rule to look at, and directors don't need to get all of that into their heads. If they did that, the company secretaries would be unemployed. You wouldn't need company secretaries in the boards. But what directors need to understand is, when you step into a boardroom, one, you must have role clarity. And second, if you're clear about what your role is as a member of the board, what is it that you bring to the boardroom that helps you to discharge that responsibility to play out that role? And that's the question that I want to pose to Gopal as we set out on this journey, which is, yes, some kind of domain knowledge, familiarity is useful, maybe not domain expertise in every case. You need to be worldly wise, because the board is a seat of wisdom, management is a seat of knowledge. You need to have some experience. Many people who've been there, done that, get into boardrooms. But then there is this additional element that you talk about in your book. And I want you to spend a little time explaining why that is the element that sets the winners apart from the losers.
Well, thank you very much for having me here and inquiring into the very subject that I was obsessed with. I don't mind admitting.
It's a shared obsession.
It's a shared obsession.
Yes.
I think for all of us. None of us wants companies that keep failing. So since I said I've spent 37 years on boards, over 25 companies in India, Sri Lanka, Arabia, England, what is it that I can stand back, because I'm at a stage of life when I can stand back and think about it and accept my own mistakes, which I have made. And I came to a profound conclusion. And this Brahma Mantra I'm going to share with you now. And you can go and tell everybody that I said it, because it's not a secret. And the Brahma Mantra is that we are always looking at the same face of corporate governance. We define it, we make laws pertaining to accountancy, Companies Act, and so on, SEBI, stock exchanges, but we never see the other side. It is like that Satyam Shivam Sundaram. You are always seeing Zenith, Shashi Kapoor is always seeing Zenith Aman's pretty face. Until suddenly he saw the other side, and of course the whole movie unraveled. And it's the other side that I've seen. And the side of corporate governance that we see regularly, which is epitomized by the discussion you just had, and probably had in the previous days as well, is the aspect of accountancy, ratings, and so on, which are the teachable things in corporate governance. And so institutes who are training you are also teaching you all that. But the unteachable things, which is behavior, which happens in a boardroom, is not much commented upon. It is there. I can't say we are the first people to do it. And therefore, we have written a whole book, and we decided in advance we will retain only 200 pages, because the person must be able to buy it at an airport. We do want people to buy it, obviously, but read it on the flight to Calcutta and say this is an easy read. The hope that something will remain for them to think over in board. So we have looked at the behavioral part of directors, and no law can change behavior. Laws can encourage a certain type of behavior, but behaviors don't change laws. It's the other way around. Laws are made to change behavior by putting restrictions. So we wrote that book, and if I might just conclude with a little anecdote to dramatize this, and I admit I'm dramatizing it. Between you and the chimpanzee, you meaning all of us human beings, and the chimpanzee, 99.2% of the genomes are the same. It's the 0.8% we have looked at. The laws are looking at the 99.2. So that's the essence of our book. We called it Inside the Boardroom, How Behavior Trumps Rationality. Because our image of a board director, and there are many aspiring directors who think they've had a distinguished career, and indeed they would have had as an executive in a private sector, public sector, government, ambassadors. And somehow this looks like a nice thing to be associated with and want to become board directors. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that the mental preparation that is required to be a director, I have realized after 37 years, needs to be spruced up. And it's for that reason that I think this is a very core conference for me. Because the high priests of corporate governance, some of them at least, are sitting in this or participating in this. And if I go to a general audience, there'll be people who say this is a very boring subject, corporate governance. So I don't use the word corporate governance. I say inside the boardroom, to say inside the committee of your building society, inside the managing committee of the club you are a member of. If you're in a temple subcommittee or a music sabha, go to Shanmugananda Sabha or any other sabha, you'll find similar issues of behavioral. And that is what has caught my attention.
I want to take you to two specifics. You mentioned Satyam in your book, and for good reasons. You cannot have a book about behavior in boardrooms without talking about Satyam. It would be incomplete, to say the least. And then we have Enron. Boards which had phenomenal directors in terms of what they were in a previous life, what they were doing outside of the boardroom. And then in both these boardrooms, something went wrong, right? So is it because they were not suited to this in terms of temperament? That filter was not applied when they were brought to the boardroom? Is it that they decided thus far and no further? At the end of the day, the promoter has set up the company. If Raju wants to do something, who are we to stand in the way? We will raise all our objections, but when it comes to taking a shot at the goal, we will not do it. We would not offend him because he invited us. Enron, some of the best names that you had at that point of time, including, and both boards had a commonality. Both had people who taught finance. Both had people who were in the area of governance. One was teaching governance in a US university, and yet collectively they clearly failed. I don't want to pull my punches. What was that behavioral aspect that stood in the way of their actually telling the promoters and the management, look, we want no part of this?
I can only speculate,
Yeah.
and because I wasn't on the Enron board either, neither on the Satyam board. I reflected on this through my own experiences, and I must say I referred to other people's writings and books. I don't claim originality. And in the book that we have written, we have provided a questionnaire of 15 questions, which you can answer yes, no.
Yeah, but you did the reverse counting. The 4, 3, 2, 1 is a reverse count you did.
Okay. But if you tick the boxes there, you can get a score of 10 to 15, and I've taken 3 buckets to make it easy. You can get a score of 4 to 10, or you can get a score of less than 4. If you're getting a score of less than 4, it shows that there are a few aberrations of behavior in your board, but it's okay. No human being is perfect. If you get a score of 4 to 10, you say there are some red signals in your board. You need to be alert and think about the things that are bothering you as per your answers to them. But if you get a score of more than 10, then you better rethink whether you want to be on that board. And I'm not going into the questions themselves because that's not what you asked me to do. Neither am I carrying the book with me. But it's a bit like the Reader's Digest, it pays to increase your word power. If you get a score of 12 or 13, I can guarantee you, please go home, buy the book, and apply this 15-point questionnaire to what's happening in the country. Apply the 15-point questionnaire to what's happening in some major company which keeps coming in the news periodically. Okay? I guarantee you, if you get a score of less than 10, you're a biased party. It has things such as, because you answer, if the CEO looks like the god of the company and he is there everywhere, watch it. In itself, that's a sufficient condition but not a necessary condition. And you can go on through the other level. If his story sounds very charming when you're listening to him, but when you think about it, somehow there's a feeling of doubt, watch it. If the valuation of the company or the profits are increasing beyond normal human comprehension, watch it. We are not saying these are impossible, by the way. But with due respect to my friends, Ashish and so on before, Amit, if you find that your regulations are pretty good and the best in the world, thank you very much. But if foreign funds are coming and pumping up a share price to astronomical levels, and you have not even made the attempt to understand it, and the regulator has all the powers in the world, all the laws in the world, but he has admitted he can't get to the bottom of it. Come on. There is something, and that lies in behavior. That's my hypothesis. Our hypothesis, I have a co-author who's an academic at the SP Jain Institute. So I think in the case of Enron, I don't know, perhaps less so because I don't know the individuals involved. I mean, Enron was toast of the town. When things are going well, you're on the front cover page, you're obsessed with yourself. And the Enron case in particular, the almost attitude, you don't understand, these are the new business models, guys. You dumbos, you're sitting on Wall Street. We know better. So I think there are always signals that are coming, which is one of the reasons why I'm totally against this concept of a promoter. It's a dud idea, which only India has. Nobody in the world has that concept of a promoter. But we can't get rid of it either.
Yeah, and they remain promoters even they have less than 5% shareholding.
Absolutely.
And some of them are wanting to be reclassified, and
Nobody's
the
allowing them.
rules are getting in the way, so they remain promoters. But again, if you look at the 2008 financial crisis, you look at Bear Stearns, you look at what happened in Merrill, there was a change. If you look at some of those, Lehman Brothers, and all of it is down to behavior in the boardroom and governance.
Correct.
The questions that ought to have been asked were not asked. If they were asked, they were not answered. There were no follow-up questions. And I must tell you this about the Enron board, that much after Enron blew up, I met one of the directors on the Enron board at the JFK airport. It was a casual meeting. And I thought this was too good an opportunity to pass up, so I asked him, so how come you didn't know this was going wrong? I mean, you were celebrated for your understanding of the corporate world. He said, we weren't told. So being a somewhat pesky type of guy, if I wasn't what I am, I would have been, Lata, I would have been a reporter maybe. I would have asked all the difficult questions, I don't know. So I said, but did you ask? You weren't told, but did you ask? But then God intervened. Somebody came and took him away and said, your flight has been announced. I'm still waiting for the answer to that question. The point is, did some of these people ask? Satyam is much worse. They asked the questions, they expressed all the reservations. In fact, one of the directors said, have you guys decided this and are we going to rubber stamp the proposal as a board? And then you come to the last part of the proceedings where it says after detailed discussions it was unanimously approved. And you wonder what happened between those paragraphs, because there is some discontinuity between what has been said till then. So are members of the board saying at one stage, okay, we will ask questions, we will raise doubts, we will express our difficulty in understanding the merit of the proposal, but when push comes to shove, we will hold back and say at the end of the day we are, visiting artists on a quarterly basis, and what right do we have to derail some proposal that the promoter seems to have invested his emotions in addition to his money. How does that change? Can boardrooms change that? Can people get together collectively and say, sorry, we will ask the politically inconvenient questions in the boardroom? Do you see that happening?
I would be dishonest if I said I can see it happening as though I am some...
No, in the future, as you look into the future.
I think just like behavioral economics did not become fashionable, and nobody bothered about it until Amor Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, and then they got the Nobel Prize and so on. Behavioral corporate governance has not got a currency. And I'm hoping in a small contribution, I've just put a little building block. Behavioral corporate governance will start to occupy the minds of leaders who are influencing the course of corporate governance, because that's what's missing. That's the 0.8% of the DNA, because everybody's focused on the 99.2%, which is the same as a chimpanzee, so we get chimpanzee-like results. And in all the cases that you mentioned, long before your context arises for you to ask a question or for you to be told, those are what I call cognizant knowledge. You can ask and you can get a reply. But there are behavioral knowledges that come well before. And let me use a metaphor. Looking at the profile of people here, I think you will relate with the metaphor looking at the age group of the profile I can see. You have a teenage son or daughter. He is 12, 13, it's an age of change. If the behavior of the child changes, they don't get up in the morning, their marks are slipping, they look a bit phased out, they're using words which you never heard them use before. As a parent, would you wait to be told? Or would you wait to be asked? You would intuitively, the father, mother, or both of them together, try to find out more about it. Because behavior is what leads to inquiry, not knowledge. We've got this funny idea that lots of knowledge leads to inquiry, but behavior is what leads to inquiry. And therefore, that inquiry will lead you to ask or to be told. Of course, if you're told a blatant lie, even then you may say, my child is behaving odd. At an extreme case, you may put a detective, but hopefully you don't get that far for most of us. And I think in the board, and I can mention experiences I've had without mentioning the companies for obvious reasons, where we've done that. I'm not very proud of the fact that I've been privy and party to the firing of 7 CEOs. That's not exactly a track record I put on my biodata, but has to be done. And I would like to believe whoever might have initiated that or whoever might have taken it forward I was very thankful that I could have come close to getting fired and I didn't get fired. So that's fine. And I was very happy to see that it was the behavior that led to inquiry, the inquiry led to facts, and so we must look to the backstory. And I think that's what we miss when we get obsessed with the laws.
Okay.
Laws are important, don't get me wrong. Regulator,
yeah.
law, all that is important. You must have policemen to follow what's happening to the traffic rules. You must have traffic rules. But you must look at behavior of drivers also.
Yes, and do some defensive driving also.
Exactly,
in the process.
exactly.
Yes. Okay. There's a related question, which is this larger than life chairman, promoter, CEO, MD, call him or her whatever you will, influencing the conversations in the boardroom. When I say influencing the conversations, I'm being charitable. Often there's no conversation because this person is so domineering that it's a monologue more than a conversation in the boardroom. And anyone that wants to get in a word edgewise, it's like one of our favorite television anchors. Many people don't go to his shows. They say, we've been well brought up. We are told not to interrupt, and therefore we will never get to express our point of view. So we'll have to keep quiet. So some people go there, sit down, and then come back, not having disrupted the so-called conversation in the boardroom. Is that part of the problem where behavior is absent? The right behavior.
Part of the problem that you are not interrupting or objecting to that behavior. I've been on a board where there's one obstreperous, in my opinion, obstreperous character. He happened to be a very good, at that time at least, a very good friend of the boss man. And so nobody wanted to take up. But there was an occasion, and I don't think I was risking my life or my limb, but I said, hang on, let me finish. And when we came out, people said, "Hey, you told that guy that." I said, listen, I am on this board for my judgment, not for my knowledge. People make this mistake of, why are they on a board? You're hired on a board for judgment. Please don't think that knowledge is worth zero. But it is the cherry on the cake is judgment. The cake itself is wheat flour and sugar and all that stuff. And if you cannot exercise that judgment, then what are you doing on the board? And I do believe part of the behavioral training that directors need is how to disagree without becoming disagreeable. It requires training. It's not easy. Because you've grown up in a society where you don't challenge Papa, you don't challenge grandfather, you don't challenge the school teacher. Now let's not moan about it. That's the reality, that's the culture, and that's fine. So I do believe that when you are helping people to become a director, if you give them this training, they will be able to say, please, may I just finish? And there are very nice ways. I've seen lovely human beings say it in a lovely way. The other guy's got the message, you'll see him pipe down a bit. And he may hold a grudge against you, that's a risk you take. But it's considered a very welcome intervention. So I do believe that behavioral training is what is missing. That's that 0.8%, which these gentlemen who came before us, 99.2 have got it right. Thank you very much. But I want somebody to look at 0.8.
No, is it
And
also,
mine is a small attempt.
is it also something to do with the fact that maybe some people call it Indian culture? I don't know. I don't understand that. Some people think that if you express a contrary view in the boardroom, it is likely to impact your relationship with the manager or the promoter, the chairman, whoever, and that damage that is done to the relationship, perceived damage, goes outside the boardroom and continues. And therefore, I don't want to be on the bad books of somebody. Therefore, questions that arise in my mind, I will hold them back. Maybe in private conversation I will ask, but I will not ask in the boardroom. So is that part of the problem, what we call the Indian culture problem, for want of a better word? The other point which I want you to talk about is, the mutual fund industry has a very good warning. Past performance is no guarantee of future returns, right? Now, if I have been a great football player, a great army officer, a great something, and then you bring me into the boardroom and it becomes, as the Englishmen used to call it, flower vase directors. They bring color into the boardroom, but nothing much more than color. So is that part of the problem that I want, especially when I'm just doing an IPO, I want good names. Whether they are able to commit quality time to my board, do they understand anything about what this company is about? The answer is a clear no. And yet, I want them on the board. Oh, clearly, their behavior might be very polite. They may make the right noises, but they won't ask the right questions. They won't be told lies. There was a gentleman called Babu Rao Patel many years ago who brought out a magazine. I forget what his name was. The Mother India, is it? Right, yeah. And he had a column with a very interesting heading. I didn't much care for what he said. Ask me no questions and I will tell you no lies. So is that what is happening in the boardroom?
I suppose to some extent. But it is happening because you are not wanting to influence the dynamics of the board. And late in my life and career, probably too late, but then we all become wise as we get older, I have started putting two criteria for recruiting an independent director where I have an influence or say in that. First, don't tell me he's a wonderful chartered accountant or lawyer or former regulator or ambassador to this country. That's all fine.
Former regulators also discount. Okay.
I don't discount them. I just say that those are their technical skills. Thank you very much. Show me where he or she has exercised judgment.
Okay.
Usually that question knocks off the person who's saying something because you don't know.
Very good filter. Not many go through that.
Now, I'm not saying that those who don't get an answer are bad director candidates. Don't get me wrong. But it forces you to think about something. It's like you're telling your young son, your progress in life will depend on how you overcome obstacles rather than how you seize opportunities. And then the boy goes away saying, what dad said sounded profound. What the hell does he mean, you know? And it's the same thing. You ask him, show me an example where he or she has exercised judgment. So that is one criterion that I put. The second that I add is, we are already 9 of us around the table. The effectiveness of this board is more important to me than the efficiency of this board. And I make that distinction.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Because to most people, they are about the same thing. They are not. The laws of physics will tell you that efficiency is the shortest distance between 2 points. Effectiveness is the ability to get around and get the job done. And effective things are usually inefficient. So, with these 9 people around the table, am I getting an output which is more than 9? Because 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 9 is no great algorithm. And with that addition, will this 9 become 11? So, in these two questions, I have found a lot of good discussion takes place. A lot of masala comes out. Masala not in a gossipy sense. A lot of I don't know that sort of thing. And I think it will help.
The other question I have for you, and this is based on observation.
I don't want it in the SEBI rules, that this is what we should be doing, because then it will become a routine thing.
No, if SEBI writes it in the rules, it's easier to escape doing it. No, what I wanted to ask you was this, that you get two kinds of people I'm oversimplifying, in boardrooms. Those who have something to say and those who have to say something. And is that latter element, those who have to say something, part of the behavioral dynamics of the board, is adversely impacting the conversation in the boardroom?
It does.
On every subject.
Yeah, they must
I have a point of view. It might be completely useless, completely tangential. It may expose my ignorance, but I have the courage to be seen as ignorant. Therefore, I'll keep holding forth on that.
Absolutely right. In fact, one of the behavioral training, I've listed down 11 or 12, but one can expand it based on other people's views. One of them is, on which point should I object mildly and which should I object strongly?
Okay.
You know, every point doesn't have to be resulting in a thumping of the table and walking out, you know. So there are some points. For example, the management comes and says, I want to put a factory to make this bottle. It can be either in Nanded or Sangli. And here's our matrix which shows that Sangli is a little better than Nanded. I can say, listen, I also put up a factory in Sangli 100 years ago when I used to be in service. There are some issues there. Just look into that matter. But if everybody agrees with Sangli, I'll go with Sangli. Now, that's a very different situation where you have expressed a view mildly and constructively as compared to somebody who comes and says, you know, all the numbers show that this acquisition is a hugely risky one. And our balance sheet can ill afford that risk, but nonetheless, I want to go ahead. And you sit there and say, okay, if you are the promoter and you say so, that's fine. This is the difference I make. And there, you must thump the table. And I was on the board of a company where the company which was in the steel business wanted to get into telecom. And one of the directors said, no way. I don't care whether the promoter wants it or if somebody else wants it. And he prevented that from happening. And in hindsight, I think he was dead right.
That's interesting. In fact, for those of you who are interested, Arthur Haley's last book called Strong Medicine has about three and a half pages on discussions in a boardroom on exactly what he said. They want to set up a new plant. Should it be set up in the United States, which is the home of the company, or in the UK, which is where scientists of the appropriate background and expertise reside? And it's a fascinating discussion, those three and a half pages. Of course, like American boards, the language is somewhat rough, and therefore there's no quarter asked, none given. But the way the decision emerges out of that is fascinating. I don't see those conversations in Indian boardrooms. You tend to hold back. If you want to make a statement, somebody else holds back. In fact, one of my major achievements as a director is that after I joined a board, about 2-3 meetings later, I told the chairman of the board, somebody was making a presentation and he was making no progress because everyone was firing questions at him. He had 30 pages and he was at page 3 or 4 and unable to make progress. So I told the chairman, I was a newbie on the board, so I didn't know the practices in the board. I said, why don't we let him finish and hold back our questions and ask? I was told, you are preventing the board from benefiting from my knowledge. I said that knowledge can come half an hour later after he's made the presentation. But when we adjourned for lunch, I was told by a very senior director, somebody many years older than me, he said, do you know what you have done after you joined the board? You have reduced the airtime taken by the chairman from 98% to 96%. And that I regard as one of my significant achievements in the boardroom, which brings me to a question. Some people become chairman either because they are the senior most or their family members or what. Should there not be intensive training on how to lead a board if a board is to actually lead the company?
You know, if you're already the director of the company,
yes,
and you've been a director for some time, putting you through classroom sessions by somebody may not be the best. You should be wise enough by that time.
Yeah.
When I became a director, nobody trained me. But I went and bought Ramcharan's book, this book, that book. I talked to a few secretaries, a few accountants, and learnt it. And if you're becoming the chairman...
But to chair a board.
Yeah.
See, being a director is another ball game altogether.
No, but Ramcharan writes very clearly. His books are very good. By the way, I'm not pretending that I've written a book which is an Indian Ramcharan book, but it is not dissimilar. How to make effective boards is what I've written, because I would hope that I've taken more Indian examples where people can relate with it. An outgoing chairman or his own observations of previous chairman should be a good indication. But if he does not take the initiative to do a bit of reading, talking with other people, then you have to put him through a training course. When I became a director, I went out and asked people. I said, what the hell is a director do? You know, is he responsible, not responsible, accountable, not accountable? And then I was given various opinions, and then I was directed to read some books, not directed, suggested to read some books. So I became self-taught, so maybe I'm a bit more on the self-taught at that stage. But if you're the first-time director or first time you become chairman, or if you're on a family-managed business where your dad has been there and he has finally moved on and you are only 35, then maybe some training is required. Because the chairman is not the chairman of the company, he's the chairman of the board.
Board, yes.
And the management is in charge of the company. We
I
sometimes lose that perspective.
I had this conversation with the legendary chairman. And after we were running a program for directors and he decided to participate. He was well past the biblical 10, but decided that he would participate. And as we adjourned for lunch, he said, look, I have been under a misapprehension. I thought I was the chairman of the company. You're now telling me I'm only the chairman of the board. I said, yes, the managing director is the managing director of the company. You're chairman of the board. Because your job is very simple. Management runs the company. You ensure that the company is run well.
Right.
That is your job, nothing more than that. But he was a hands-on man. I think at the drop of a hat, roll up the sleeves, get into the trenches, that kind of leader. So that also upsets the dynamics, the equilibrium of the board. And hence I ask this question, do they need not to be trained in the sense of make somebody sit down there, give them some material and conduct exams, nothing of that kind. Just sharing with them maybe 10, 15, 20 examples of where some boards have underperformed, sometimes even blown up, because the leadership at the board level was not good, and some of the boards where a collective leadership emerges, but the chairman doesn't lose sight of the fact that end of the day, if there is a problem, he has to. The other issue I wanted to raise with you is Reserve Bank of India circulars. Nobody from the Reserve Bank here, past, present? No. Future maybe, somewhere few might get in there, okay. Reserve Bank of India circulars seem to suggest that the minute you have a difference of opinion, you should record your dissent. How does that work? My entire thesis is you have debate, discussion, dialogue, deliberations. Dissent comes at the end of the thing. If nothing else works, and my personal view is, if it's a violation of law or regulation, or it is a clear indication of something being done not in the interest of the company, and you're unable to persuade the others, dissent by all means. But otherwise, rushing to dissent seems to be something that's being pushed. How does the board function as a collective in that case?
Yeah, this is the example of, I don't know the Reserve Bank regulation, I'm not familiar with it.
You're a lucky man.
It is an example of
We had a deputy governor yesterday here.
I see.
Who was telling us how the world is going to be a better place courtesy the Reserve Bank of India. So anyway, yeah.
I've sent a copy of my book to the governor of the Reserve Bank because he gives a lot of speeches on what independent directors should do. So I thought I would offer that as a small contribution, if at all it is. I do agree with you. In the book we have described 7 Ds. Starts with describe, which is a French word which means get engaged with the subject. And it ends with disclose. The one before disclose is depart. And it says you have to escalate your dissent in a calibrated manner. I mean, oh, you should put your thing in Sangli, put in the board meeting, I oppose Sangli. I mean, that's ridiculous. But, you know, you want something which is done which is on the border of unethicality, I don't agree with it, put it, that is a dissent. So I agree with you. And I don't know the context of the Reserve Bank thing. I can't, you're not asking me to comment on that.
No, the Reserve Bank has been voted in the world's best governor at this point of time. And those in the press that criticized a history graduate for going there now realize he's made history. He's actually the...
By the way, Enron and Satyam were both voted as the best governed companies, and next week something happened. So I'm not saying this as the Reserve Bank, but...
No, Enron, I will tell you 2 things. Since you're a TATA man, I was present when the Tatas did their code of conduct refresh. I was present at that function, and I mentioned to them that it might seem like a minor detail. They said, we have 32 pages of detail on this. I said, don't go by the page numbers. Enron at 64. So Don't go by that. And Enron, incidentally, when Arthur Levitt was chair of the SEC, he put out a new accounting requirement. Enron was one of those who wrote back immediately saying, we have the best board, we have the best auditors, we have the best practices, we are this, that, and the other. Why do we need this new rule? It was exactly 7 months before Enron blew up. And all the bests disappeared at that time. So I don't know whether having these larger-than-life people, packing them there, and then they turn a blind eye. And I was asked this question once at one of the IIMs. We were speaking on the Satyam problem, but that was not what was interesting to that guy. He said, you've been a former regulator, and you had created a problem for us. So what is that problem? I was a little taken aback. I thought we were discussing Raju's peccadillos and not my problems, right? So what is the problem? He says, before you brought in these independent directors, this institution of independent directors, we used to look at how the company was being run to the best that we could do. Then you brought these independent directors and we thought they were batting on our behalf, so we took the eyes off the ball. And we find these guys have also gone to sleep in the boardroom, so you've created a problem by appointing independent directors. So what is attempted as a solution often becomes a problem that you need to press. What I will do is, I notice I'm looking at the clock, in the previous sessions, we have not left enough time for audience questions. You are now in the presence of a person who is applying a lot of time, effort, thought into how to make boards better, how to make directors better, etc. Don't lose the opportunity, 20 minutes. I'll take your questions. I have 2 ground rules. You have to identify yourself by name, and then don't make a comment. We'll leave that to the panelists. Ask a question. Who wants to get started? Okay, yeah. Tirthankar. Oh, I thought you were asking, Mr. George, yes.
I'm George. Sir, unfortunately, it's a comment, but very relevant.
No, it doesn't matter.
You are telling about training to the chairman. INSEAD runs a program called Leading the Chair. I was attended it 2 years back. Only chairmen are called 2-day program. It was extremely good. I found it very useful. One interesting thing I said, we are managing conflicts in the boardroom every time. And the most important takeaway for me was that as a chair, you should close the issue between the directors at the end of the day, before the board session is over. If there has been argument, settle it, then only you can run it smooth. I think your point, I agree with. That's all. Thank you.
No, I think you made a very valid point. But there are some chairmen who create the conflict in order to demonstrate their conflict resolution abilities. We shouldn't travel down that path. We need to be careful about that. Any comment on that? He's talking about training the chair. Right? He's an award winner in governance, incidentally. Yes. Yes, Jairaj. Before you come in, I've always been a backbencher in my life. I think Devashish.
The lady has been putting up her
and
hand.
then we'll come to you. Who's asking the question?
Yeah, in the front.
I'm unable to see somebody.
Here,
Yes.
Inga, in the middle, on the left.
Oh, yeah, please, go
Can I
ahead.
start?
Deepthi, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm Dipti Neelkantan. So you've been obviously very closely associated with all managements in the course of your work and also on the board of various companies. My biggest, I think, observation has been the limited time that the boards are able to spend, even if it is 2-day meetings and whatever. The information that they can discuss is what is presented to them. And we provide for all behavioral noticing and all that. How do we train, or are there any SOPs that probably are developed by mature groups like TATA's, where managements are also taught or they are given certain guidance as to the material that must be presented to the board? Because very often one hears from board members 2 things. One is the agenda is so big, we don't have time to read. Second is, we do not want to see matters which do not concern us. So if you are a conglomerate, for example, and you are telling me information about the subsidiary companies, which has its own board with independent directors. Why am I being told about this? I don't want to know about it. So there is a, I think, presumed protection by saying this data wasn't given to me. How do we deal with these situations?
That's an excellent question. And I will narrate an experience rather than pontificate about it. There was one company where the CEO would come and say, you know, I propose, not a stitch of paper, maybe one chart. I propose that we spend 1,500 crores, we'll buy this company, we'll merge it, we'll do this, we'll do that, and I'm seeking the board's approval, and the company secretary has put a resolution appropriately. And as a board member, I said, I don't know, I'm not used to this 1,500 crores. I mean, if it's 15 lakhs, one can take a view and say, okay, carry on. So, and other board members agreed. So the next time, he sent a truck to each director's house with papers which they could not even carry to the boardroom, either due to disability or age, as the case may be. So I wasn't the chairman of that company. The chairman of the board, I happened to be present. Had a conversation saying, hey, listen, you're a CEO of a fairly large company. Use your judgment a little bit. When a director tells you he doesn't get enough information, you next send him a truckload of stuff. He said, well, you tell me what you want, you'll get it. This attitude went on after several counseling sessions. Did we do nothing about it? We fired him. It was couched in different words. So it didn't hit the headlines.
Showed him the exit door.
Showed him the exit door. So that's one example, that if you can't even be sensitive and put yourself in the shoes, I mean, you're a managing director of a large public listed company and you can't understand a conversation with the chairman of the board, then maybe you shouldn't be there, because you're really saying, you guys know nothing about my business. If I tell you nothing, you're saying you're telling me nothing. If I tell you something, you're saying you're telling me too much. You tell me what forms you want, I'll fill it up and send it to you. That's not the kind of CEO we wanted. So that's one extreme example. But I must say there are many other examples where out of such a conversation, we assign one of our colleagues who says, I am prepared to sit with you and say how it is done in some other board. And this is the information you have. That's a constructive engagement, and that also works. But the dilemma continues. How many charts, how many... I know in one board even said, no chart should have more than
5 lines.
5 lines or something like that, some such guideline. And the poor person, in my Mahabharata example, I have started the book with a Mahabharata example, where I have taken KP Enterprises, Kaurava Pandava Enterprises, as having a board comprised of Dhritarashtra as the chairman, and Sanjaya, who is available, company secretary, but who doesn't tell him too much unless he's asked. And Duryodhana is the managing director, and Yudhishthira is the CFO, and so on. I have described it in the book. And in that sort of an example, I think it's very important to be having a constructive engagement, because somebody talked about conflict, that the role of the chairman is to resolve the conflict, not to promote it, but to accept that that's a reality. And I think it's very important to engage constructively. We can't work on the basis that every CEO is obstreperous, obstinate. That is a silly way to go about it. We all have different ways of doing things. And it is that sensitivity in behavior. A guy who's joined a board wants to contribute. I mean, it is unfair to assume that he's there just to sort of have a few stripes on his epaulette. So, most conflicts are resolved through engagement, not through fatwas. That's not some special corporate thing, it's in politics.
Fatwas don't resolve
Fatwas
conflicts.
don't
They
resolve
put a lid
conflicts.
on it, actually.
They actually promote it.
Yeah, Devashish Mohanty. After that, Jairaj.
Yeah. So my question was...
and then, sorry, and I'll get to you after that. Yeah, okay.
My question was somewhat linked to what Madam has asked. See, when in the previous meetings also, that questions of information asymmetry, insufficiency or overload. Is it that difficult for the directors to ask the right questions which will unravel, piercing and exact answer that either the managing director will respond, or then you will know whether he is supporting or resisting. So that information, whatever you want, you can ask and see the response of the team whether they are cooperating or not. Is that difficult to find out the exact requisite questions to be framed?
You know, they referred to information asymmetry, I think, in the last session. You don't know how asymmetrical it is. And when you don't know the subject, how do you know what to ask? I'll give you an example. You're all very talented, corporate, accomplished people. If I ask you to come and ask me the right questions about what's happening in Uganda, you will not even know. You say, tell me something about Uganda before I ask you questions. And believe me, if you spend all your life in a soap company counting the number of bubbles that come out of shaking your hands in it, then if you're put into a motor car company, you are at a loss. So it is difficult. After several years of experience, maybe you'll be better.
I hope you got your answer, Jairaj. You want to ask something? Yeah. I've noted that your hand is up, but we have enough time now. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Speak. Yeah.
Gopal, for me, the essence of what you have put in your book are the play on three key terms: niyam, niti, and niyat. And in the context of explaining why some boardrooms are ineffective as opposed to others, perhaps as a takeaway for all of us, you can dwell a little bit more on these three terms.
Let me try to be brief about it so that the trouble with having written a book is if somebody asks you a good question, you feel like spending the rest of the time. You know, everybody around the boardroom must be assumed to be convergent on the niyati of the company. Niyati is progress, the goodness, the bhalai of the company. In order to assure the niyati of the company, you need three things. Directors and management need to assess what is the niyat. Niyat is an Arabic word, niya, which is an Arabic word, is come into Hindi. Niyat is strategic intent. What do you really want to do out of this? Niti is conduct. What is your behavior? And niyam are the rules that follow. All the corporate governance training courses, which are very valuable and must continue, by the way, nobody should think I'm banging them on the head, is focused on the niyam. But you as a director need to think of, since all of us are convergent on the niyati of the company, what is the niti of the so-called promoter, a word which I don't particularly like, but it is there, so I'll use it. Now, imagine that you are in the board of a company where somebody has become chairman and you know his tenure is 2 years. He just wants to get out unscathed. That's one type of chairman you may find. There's another type of chairman who may say, I want to make my mark in 2 years. There's a third type of chairman who will say, what can you do in 2 years? Let it be. None of them are bad chairmen. They're just different approaches. But that tells you the niyat and what will happen in that boardroom. Niyat, niti, and niyam. So that's what I have said in the book. And I have found it very valuable to guess the niyat of the promoter. There's some promoter, I know in one company, I won't mention a name, the promoter chairman, I'm using the word which everybody understands it. Just before the nominations and remuneration committee, he called the chairman of the nominations committee. He's not a member of it. And he said, by the way, the profits of the company have been calculated and whatever you can pay as commission to the directors has been calculated to be something, 2.5 crores. I just thought I should let you know that the 2.5 crores should be distributed by 2 crores to me. And the balance 50 lakhs to the other 7 directors. The person who told me this said, yes sir, 3 bags full. I didn't want to be judging him and telling him that he shouldn't have done that. But that's what I mean by niyat. When you see a pot of honey in every beehive, then it becomes questions, Your Dear.
But he's very generous. Only he wanted 2 crores out of 2.5. I know a company where there was an increase, let's say X%, let's call it 100. And all the directors were told that. And the directors were in a very happy mood because that was a company which was paying token compensation. And then we discovered that 2 family members on the board walked away with 95% of that increased amount. 5% being left to seven other directors. Tirthankar.
These are the kind of things that,
Yeah.
if you're a thinking director, you can influence. And whether you choose to make it a matter of principle, if you're scared to raise it because you may be eased out of the board, it's a possibility. But I always, since I've referred to the Mahabharata in the opening of my book, we are coming to the end of our session, I'll refer to Ramayana. When Vibhishana wanted to tell Ravana that it's wrong to kill Hanuman. Hanuman, yes. Because the whole court was baying for the beheading of Hanuman. He had to tell him that this is against the laws of diplomacy and governance. So he started by praising Ravana. Ravana, you're such a learned man. You know so many, you got so many boons from so many gods. It doesn't behove you to fall foul of Article 123. And as you know, Hanuman was saved. But then his career suffered after that. Vibhishana's career suffered after that. Okay?
Sir, I think what we have seen in the last 1.5 days is Tirthankar here, sir. I'm from the National Stock Exchange. Corporate governance, especially boards, directors, this is not an easy cup of tea for everyone. My question is on scalability, sir. I mean, not everybody can read Ramcharan's books. Some people will take, a lot of people I hope will take efforts, I myself included, to read your book. But we have hundreds of companies coming into the listed space now. And first I needed your thoughts on how does corporate governance move when we move beyond the top 500 companies? What happens? There are thousands of companies beyond there also. And what are your thoughts on how this can be scaled up? How do we get a culture of corporate governance in the long tail, sir, for the country?
That's a fantastic question. Just a few stats. It is sometimes useful to throw it in. India has 63 million enterprises. Just comprehend, 63 million. This is as per the government's MSME, SME, some ministry. Of these, how many have turnover more than 10 crores? I'm talking of turnover, 19,000. Out of the 19,000, how many are listed on the stock exchange? 5,000. Out of the 5,000, how many are actively traded by your venerable institution? 2,000. Out of the 2,000, how many account for 80% of the market cap? 3 digits. So we are a land of a lot of pygmies with very few, and a few giraffes and a few elephants. We need to democratize our corporate capitalism and governance. It's a long journey. And I am certainly, in my dreaming, at my age I'm allowed to dream. Dreams won't last forever, but while it lasts, pushing the agenda that we have to create companies that learn to scale up business along with governance, and what is the framework for that? It's a very small contribution, but since you asked the question, I'm telling you.
But there's one thing we need to guard against, which is to equate size and the quality of governance.
Yep.
The size of a company is no guarantee that it is well governed, and we've seen the big companies being caught with their pants down in any case. Whereas there are mid-cap companies which are very well run. I think the 2 questions here, somebody from
Lata,
here.
Lata.
Yeah, Lata, go ahead.
The irrepressible Lata.
Yeah.
I don't know how companies choose boards. Do board members who are troublesome like journalists, are they kept out? I mean, you don't even invite them? Or do you see a pattern? Do promoter-run companies, do you find them more keeping difficult people at bay? Are professionals-led and now we have many private equities buying, promoters up. are they more open to independent directors or those who are genuinely, whose niti is independent? What is the behavior of companies when they choose board members?
Lata, like the energetic journalist that you are, you have touched upon a very, very key root cause. Now, I'm expressing an opinion, and many of you may not agree with me, but it's only an opinion. I believe that most of us, most human beings, most institutions don't want interference and kitbit. So I don't blame it whether promoter or even professionally run companies. यार ज़्यादा बहस करने वाला नहीं बुलाओ यार, manage करो, okay? It's like the daughter-in-law that you seek in your family. You want her to do a cooking, but you don't want her to keep her to the house, but you want her to quit her job. You know, you have all these deep-rooted ideas in your head. I don't know, I can't comment on journalists specifically, but one of the things that I have found useful. Yeah. If somebody has a reputation of being an inconvenient pest, it is true that that person's chance of getting invited to a board
is less.
I can't change the algorithm of how people think. Just like if somebody is known to be a very troublesome girl, you're unlikely to aspire to get her into your house as a daughter-in-law or son-in-law for that matter. So what I have found useful to do, even at the risk of some expense, and I'm doing this in companies, the few companies left where I am still there, is to employ a headhunter, give them the specification, allow anybody else to make suggestions, and tell them to do like you search for a vice president or a, supply chain vice president. I think it brings some objectivity that I don't bring my old classmate, who's a wonderful man, by the way, like all classmates are. But yes, if you got an image of being pesky and difficult, I'm afraid it doesn't count.
We have time for one more question. I think the gentleman in the middle asked. His hand has been up for a long time, yes. If he makes it a brief question, you'll get your chance. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for the session. Wonderful insights. This
Hold
is
it close.
Anand.
Hold it closer.
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful session, sir. This is Anand Narayan. Sir, my question is particularly related to the theme. One of the main aims of the corporate governance is to protect the interest of the investors. Now, of late, we have also seen that though we have a very stringent corporate governance norm, but we have been seeing that the damage has already happened, and particularly the small investors, the relief basically to the small investors have kicked in quite late. So I just wanted to know your thoughts and pick your brains on this as to how do you think the regulator and also the board should evolve themselves to protect the interest of the retail investors particularly in the real time. Thank you, sir.
If I've understood your question, you're saying how can the board function to protect the interests of a small shareholder? Is that your question?
He mentioned investors, but I imagine he meant the entire ecosystem. Yeah.
See, the first rule of investment is you're investing with your eyes open and your ears open to take risk. So it could be up, it could be down. That's on the part of the investor. So he carries that can, he or she carries that can. The responsibility of the board is to be accountable for that valuation, because investment bankers and merchant bankers will come and tell you their respective findings. If I take TCS as an example, I was on the board of Tata Sons at that time, and the price was fixed at 1,000, 1,050, it always a range. And it is to Ratan Tata's credit that he said, don't you think we should leave something on the table for the retail investor? But not everybody is a Ratan Tata. So we finally came with the IPO at 950, because he said we are doing this IPO not to quickly Tata Sons to get its money. In fact, Tata Sons is not offering its shares. We are doing this IPO so that our grandchildren will have a much larger company. I remember the words. Well, that's happened. TCS, 950s, I don't know how many times now. So that can be the role of a promoter or board to do that. But what becomes really suspect is when the promoter pumps it up. I mean, there is a well-known IPO which was supposed to come with 3,200 rupees, which is now sitting at 2,200 rupees. Nobody is able to find out what happened. Those are the ones that are dangerous. Luckily, that was stopped by some other events that happened. And all of us know what
I think we've run out of time. I'm using television anchors language. We've run out of time, but King Shuk, in 10 seconds frame your question and you'll get a 20-second answer. Right, yeah.
So my name is Kingshuk Ganguly. My question is courage, contextual?
Is courage contextual?
Yeah.
Courage in the boardroom.
Courage in the boardroom in the spirit of independent director.
Well, I don't want to get into a long explanation of courage because that's the danger of trying to answer your question. But since your name is Kingshuk Ganguly, Jodi keu to ডাক শুনে না আসে তো একলা চলো রে।
Correct. খুব ভালো বলেছেন।
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
This is Rabindranath who said if nobody listens to your call, walk alone.
একলা চলো রে।
No, that's 20 seconds, sir. I've delivered.
Yes, very good.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for a truly thought-provoking final session. We've got the caricature and the certificate for the 10 trees that are going to be planted in your name, sir, in the Sundarbans.
Don't use this for the purpose that you said. I won't tell them that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Damodaran, for presenting the memento and the caricature.
We have to stand together for photograph. Yes.
Thanking Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan
Thank you.
for his time
Thank you.
right here. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for having been with us since yesterday. We are now at the concluding part of the Gatekeepers of Governance, and it's been a very informative, energizing 2 days of deliberations. Mr. Damodaran for the closing remarks.
I don't want to hold you back from lunch. Just 2 or 3 minutes. One, you've been a wonderful audience. We haven't had time to make it more participatory than we would have liked to. But there's always hope that next time round we'll get more time for audience questions. We tried our best in the last session. Do write with your suggestions, your comments, what changes you want, so that next time we can factor in some of those when we design and structure the program, right? We don't know the date yet, but shortly after lunch, we will engage with the management of the hotel to finalize next year's dates, and you will get information sufficiently in advance. Mr. George is clapping because he has to come from Chennai for this. Okay. So that your calendars get appropriately blocked. Right. Thank you very much, and it's always good to see familiar faces. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Upstairs at Orloff and Cullinan, where we went yesterday.